Well, today we're looking at the hip internal rotation test, and we're also going to have a look at a way that we can assess the squat. Some stuff that we picked up from the Gray Institute along the way. If you want to learn more about how to actually do the squat test, I highly recommend you go and check out some of their stuff. They've got some great stuff that really influenced the way that Andrew and myself started looking at movement before we started to look at objective data. And so what we're going to look at was the hip internal rotation test. And given that I was reasonably restricted around that right angle, I'm going to guess that there's going to be some effect up the chain there. Now obviously we'd usually have someone there to help assess us performing this test, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and just try and assess myself with the hip internal rotation test and find the point where I can no longer touch the ruler, and I'm going to take that measurement there. So I can see it starts to break down there. I'm going to come back 5 degrees closer, and I can't touch it. So the last successful touch that I did there was 55 centimeters. So you're probably looking at this test, you're probably thinking, that's not hip rotation. That's rotating from the foot, we're getting rotation through the tibia and the fibula. We're getting rotation through the femur, obviously up through the hip, and even we're getting some rotations for the spine. So it's more like a whole body rotation test with emphasis on the hip. And that's how we do things in function. If I go and pick something up from over here, I'm not going to be getting hip internal rotation in isolation there. So why do we look at it on the table? And you often see in the course, we actually start to look at hip internal rotation. We start to compare some of the assessments that we see on the table compared to some of the stuff that we see when someone's upright, when they've got gravity, they've got ground reaction forces, working on them, and with all the body parts interrelated. And what we see is the hip internal rotation that they have on the table doesn't always equal what they can actually access up here. All right, so it's really important. Look at both. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But the hip internal rotation test is a great test that we can start to look at, for the lower limb in a weight-bearing, more authentic or proprioceptively authentic, as the Gray Institute would say, position. Okay, and then we start to see, for me, some restriction on the right side compared to the left. So I've got 40 degrees of hip lower limb internal rotation on the right, 55 on the left. Remember, if you want to have a look at all this data, you want to follow the journey, make sure you click the link above, sign up supporter, you'll be able to see all of my journey over each day, as well as all the programs in there that I've programmed for myself and some of the reasoning behind it, as well as the outcomes in there and some other bonus material. So make sure, head over to the MAT website, click the link above, sign up and follow my journey. So now we've got the hip internal rotation data, I'm going to start to use the MAT to perform some squats. As I said, if you want to find out more about the squats, I highly recommend you go out and check out the Gray Institute stuff. But what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for a position, where I squat well, and maybe where I don't squat well, or where it starts to get a little bit of discomfort or tenderness through the hips. So hopefully I can find lots of positions in both the frontal plane, the sagittal plane, and the transverse plane, where I squat well, and maybe where I don't squat so well. I know what you're thinking, a lot of those squats aren't very good at all. Okay. Head over to the portal if you want to find out some more about the squats and the hip internal rotation test. Tune in tomorrow, we're going to start to look a little bit more at the spine without MAT and the spinal tests.